The title of this lecture is Charlemagne. Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, was born in 742 AD. He was the oldest son of Pepin the Short, the Frankish king. Who were the Franks? The Franks were a barbarian tribe from what is today central Germany. In the 4th century, they settled in the Roman province of Gaul, which is modern France. Clovis, their 5th century king, became a Catholic and then proceeded to stamp out the Arian heresy within his domains. Thus, the Frankish kings became staunch protectors of the interests of the Catholic Church. Also, the Franks were what I call semi-Romanized, which means that they retained their language and many of their Germanic customs, but adopted Roman institutions and were educated in Latin literature. After the death of his father, Charles became ruler of half of the Frankish kingdom, the other half going to his younger brother Carloman, it being the custom of the Franks to divide the land equally between the surviving male heirs. Carloman then conspired to divest Charles of his domains. However, in 771, Carloman died suddenly, and his kingdom was in turn passed to his 2 sons. The nobles under Carloman's sons, however, sided with Charles, who deposed his 2 nephews. Charles was now the sole ruler of the Frankish kingdom. Once Charles was the undisputed king of the Franks, he began to reinforce the Catholic character of his realm. The primary way in which he did this was education. Charles himself could read, but apparently could not write, thus he was semi-literate. He did receive a Roman education and was thus familiar with the history and literature of ancient Rome. He was also familiar with the works of the Latin Church Fathers, particularly Augustine. Charles had a particular fondness for Augustine's City of God. He would listen to it being read to him while he ate his meals. Here he would hear about 2 things: the nobility of ancient Roman civilization and the truth of Christianity. He acquired some sense of a mission, to restore Rome on a more solid foundation by infusing it with a Christian ethos. Not only did Charlemagne reinforce the Catholic character of his realm through education, he also did so through military action. He did this by waging war against the political enemies of the Church. The most troublesome of these was the Kingdom of Lombardy, located in northern Italy. This kingdom was the greatest temporal threat to the Church. Why? Because they sought to wrest the patrimony of St. Peter from the Pope. The patrimony of St. Peter was an area of territory surrounding Rome, supposedly donated by Emperor Constantine to Pope Sylvester I. In 773, Charles invaded Lombardy and defeated the Lombards. He then marched on to Rome. As he entered the city, the militia laid down before his feet the banner of the city of Rome and greeted Charles as Imperator, that is, Emperor. On Easter 774, Charles was consecrated as the first champion or protector of the Catholic Church. Another temporal enemy of the Church whom Charles defeated were the Saxons. The Saxons were a collection of tribes in central Germany. They were pagan, and they were aggressive. They slaughtered Christian missionaries who entered their territory and raided Frankish towns on the frontier. At the center of their cult was Irminsul, a sacred tree located in the city of Eresburg. Here they offered animal and human sacrifices. In 772, Charles invaded Saxony, intending 3 things. First, to protect his Christian subjects from pagan incursions. Second, to protect Christian missionaries in Saxony. And third, to put an end to paganism. During the war, Charles's forces captured the city of Eresburg and burned the tree Irminsul, and by doing so they dealt a fatal blow to the pagan cult. In 774, Charles decided that the Saxons must either convert to Christianity or die. In 785, Wittekind, the most powerful of the Saxon chieftains, finally received Christian baptism. Charles himself was his godfather. However, the complete conquest of Saxony took 30 years. In Charles's dealings with the Saxons, we see the emergence of the idea of a Christian warrior, one who literally fights for Christianity and the Church. On Christmas Day in the year 800, Charles was kneeling in prayer at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Pope Leo III approached Charles and placed an imperial crown on his head, thus making Charles the new Roman emperor in the West. Now, why did Pope Leo do this? The old Roman Empire still existed in the East, so there really already was a Roman emperor, situated in the city of Constantinople. However, these Eastern emperors were constantly intervening in church affairs. The emperor considered himself the supreme head of the church in the East. Pope Leo wanted to secure the autonomy of the church in the West. He needed to raise Charles, his protector, to imperial status. Thus Charles became Roman emperor. In this slide we have a depiction of the extent of Charlemagne's empire, the purple area. You'll notice it includes virtually all of France, most of Germany, what is today Holland, Belgium, and northern Italy. So it was quite a vast empire for its time. Another way in which Charles reinforced the Catholic ethos of his kingdom was by being a strong patron of learning. In 787, Charles ordered all bishops and abbots to keep schools in their cathedrals and monasteries for training priests. In these schools was preserved the teaching of the seven liberal arts, consisting of the trivium and the quadrivium. Now, this twofold division was a system that was inherited from the ancient Romans. The trivium consisted of grammar, rhetoric, and logic, while the quadrivium consisted of mathematics, geometry, astronomy, and music. These schools were also known for the copying and preserving of ancient manuscripts. They were known particularly for a type of calligraphy known as Carolingian minuscule, a simple yet elegant script which not only beautified the manuscripts but made them easy to read. We have an example of this script to the right on the slide. In 814, Charles died. He left his entire empire to his one legitimate son, Louis the Pious. Louis then divided the empire among his own sons, Pepin, Lothair, and Louis the German. He had a fourth son then, Charles the Bald, with his second wife, and nullified the original division. The three older sons rebelled, and Louis was forced to abdicate. The empire was divided and eventually disintegrated and became the nations of France and Germany. So what can we learn from the example of Charlemagne? In Charlemagne, we see what a committed, energetic individual can accomplish in history. Charlemagne also demonstrates the responsibility of Christians of every historical epoch to bring all things back to Christ. This, however imperfectly and however flawed, he intended to do as king and emperor of his Christian realm.